What up, Eastview Scholars? Welcome to this edition of Sharp Shorts, where we're going to look at essentially anatomy and physiology basics. More specifically, we're just going to look at the anatomical position as illustrated right here, and body cavities, and discuss a little terminology beyond what we have done in class. The key to being successful, or one key to being successful in anatomy, is literally just understanding the terminology, directional terms, and body cavities and areas. The names are all used and so similar that if you can have a basic understanding, you can really do well in understanding the different muscle groups or organs or issues that are going on, imbalances and homeostatic problems throughout the body just by terminology. Again, we've discussed this before, but this is the anatomical position. You see our young man here basically standing at attention, feet essentially close together. The difference from standing at attention in the military or growing up in a Catholic school is that your palms are facing forward and your thumbs are out. The other big key that often confuses people is where's left and right here. In the anatomical position, left is this side, right is this side. So it is not as you look at it, but it is from the view of the person in the anatomical position. We need this so that as we converse with our colleagues in the medical field and stuff that we are working, you would not want a surgeon cutting the wrong organ out because you gave him the wrong directional area. Okay. Now, regions of the body. Here's the anterior portion of the body. Here's a posterior look. There are a number of these. It's kind of like chemistry when you're doing conversion fractions and converting standard to metric or metric to metric. There's numbers of different ones, or it's like understanding the periodic table. Should you memorize where every element is? No, you shouldn't. You should just keep working with it enough, and then as you go through a systemic look of anatomy and look at each of the systems, there are things you'll get used to. Like I can believe that most of you already know the umbilical region. Okay, many of you will also know where your patella is in the front of the rear, patellar region. As we talk in terms of the skeletal system, we will talk about tarsals and metatarsals and stuff. So it's not sitting here and studying every portion of it and memorizing every one as much as it is at this point for our class to just get an idea of where these regions are. Here's the lumbar region, which are the largest and most supportive vertebra in your back down in this region. Here's your thoracic region. Here's the cervical region, brachial region for the arm. It's just starting to understand many of these things as you see the names over and over and over. When we talk about plantar flexing and we talk about body movements and plantar flexing, then that'll give you a clue that it has something to do with the foot and the direction that the foot moves. Okay. We talked about these regions in class, and again, the abdominal area highlights understanding things very well and having a common terminology so that you not just understand the 9 quadrants that your abdominal pelvic cavity are broken into, but with the large amount of organs and different systems in here and their interaction, it really is a key to kind of understand what's, for example, in the right hypochondriac region through the epigastric, and in a sense you could think of dipping just a touch in the left hypochondriac region would be your liver. Okay. All throughout here on this side would be your ascending large intestine, colon. Here would be your transverse. Here would be your descending. There is all sorts of small intestine all throughout this area. The stomach in the epigastric region heading towards the left hypochondriac region. And so it's very important to, as I draw my poor little stomach here, that those directional terms, those regional terms, and the body cavities are crucial to understanding the placement of things and for the diagnosis of any issues you may have. What I'm going to more focus on this tutorial, because the others we have looked at, are the body cavities. You can see here by this picture they are distinctly different colors, very nice. You have the dorsal or posterior cavity, still using the dorsal term, although we discussed in class that dorsal and posterior in us bipeds are the same thing, since we walk on two legs. In the anterior portion of the body is the ventral body cavity, because again, ventral and anterior for us is essentially the same thing. But you have these major cavities housing important organs and organ systems. You can see the dorsal body cavity just by, I guess, number of segments is the simpler segment, if you want to say that way. The dorsal body cavity only houses the brain and spinal cord. That's its function, protected skeletal system, and protected by the vertebrae here. The ventral body cavity, as you can see, has a number of different sections to it, all separated by membranes, and here's your diaphragm separating the thoracic cavity. So this whole area is your thoracic cavity. This whole area is your abdominal pelvic area, abdominal cavity, and the pelvic cavity, each of them housing their own organs. Here in the pleural cavity, part of the thoracic, is where your lungs are housed. Here is the mediastinum, which also contains the pericardial cavity, which has your esophagus, your trachea, and of course your heart right here. The abdominal cavity has your digestive organs, stomach, liver, intestines, etc., spleen, kidneys, and then of course down in your pelvic cavity, as indicated by the picture, is the bladder, reproductive organs, and the rectum. Okay, so different functions, different, but all cavities holding things. Now, one thing to understand with all of these cavities, whether it's dorsal or ventral, or whether it's the smaller portions of larger cavities and stuff, they are all lined by what are called serous membranes. Serous membranes are a double-layered membrane that part of it, the parietal part, is attached to the cell wall, or to the cavity wall, in a sense anchoring it in its position in the cavity. Then the other portion of it wraps directly, the visceral portion wraps directly around the organ. And I'll give you a better picture here. Here you can see it, and this is a great illustration of classic anatomical illustration of how you can view the serous membrane. It's a double-layered membrane. You can see here this surrounding the hand, that would be your visceral portion. This out here would be attached to the cavity that it's housed in, and this would be the parietal section. It is one membrane, all in one. It's just it is attached to the cavity, and then it doubles back on itself and attaches and wraps the organ. And then the area in here is filled with a serous fluid. The fluid is there essentially as a cushion and to keep it from rubbing together. If that, with all the movement and such, and the movement of the organ, just your body movement and any jarring and stuff like that, it gives you a cushion of protection. Here you can see illustrated is in the pericardial cavity is the pericardial membrane, the inner portion attached to the heart is the visceral pericardium. The outer portion anchored to the pericardial cavity is the parietal. In here is that serous fluid that keeps the two membrane parts from rubbing together, sticking together, and also provides cushion. Here, surrounding the lungs, because the lungs are in the pleural cavity, is the pleural membrane, and again, parietal, pleural membrane, parietal pleura on the outer portion, visceral pleura on the inner. I don't have a picture of the membrane surrounding the abdominal cavity, but that is called the peritoneal. And if you've ever heard of peritonitis, it just means that membrane that is the parietal portion surrounding the abdominal cavity, and the visceral portion wrapping around the many organs that are in here. That is, as you know from your term itis, is a swelling, and that's part of the problem and the concern here is if there is swelling, those portions then, when you have, say, an infection or the membrane swelling, because it's a very thin membrane, then what you'll find is that it seems to produce less fluid, and these membrane parts will rub together and stick together, and it's extremely painful. You can, pleurisy is a disorder you may have heard of that is just that swelling there, and so as your lungs expand and contract, it forces those membranes to stick together. It's very painful. It also can happen with the contraction of the heart if you have an infection of the pericardial membrane, and it also swells and rubs together. Oftentimes in the abdominal region, you hear of peritonitis, and that is inflammation and infection of that membrane, which can lead to certain issues. Anyhow, that's just a quick, brief look and tutorial on membranes and body cavities. Hopefully it helps. I will put some quiz questions on your Sophia page to help you nail down your thought process on this. So all that's left for you to do, Eastview Scholars, is scholar on.